All right, we are back with another episode of Real Talk. Um, got a long time returning guest here. It's been a hot minute. Jeff Halbert, how are you, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining the emergency pod, if you will.
Yeah.
Today was supposed to start off as a another draft conclusion that Brad and I had been doing. We were going to do 17 through 32, and we're still going to. That'll be after this little segment here. But I wanted to start off talking about the squirrel, Julian Edelman.
Baby goat.
The baby goat, Minitron. Dude's got so many nicknames.
Oh man, so many.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're a Patriot fan and you're listening to this, you know the dude came in the league. I believe he was drafted in 2009. Yeah, 2009. And ever since, he's kind of been a fan favorite because even before he was starting to get time, he was making preseason plays and punt returns in the preseason, and people were like, "Wow, we have a pretty special player on the roster that could be coming down the pipe." And if we remember correctly, back in 2009, we had two pretty solid receivers in their own right, Wes Welker, Randy Moss. So Julian
Yeah,
Edelman, as a rookie,
pretty solid.
as a seventh round player, isn't going to see. You're not going to see the field. Sorry, you're
Right.
not beating out Randy Moss and Wes Welker. So, with that being said, there's it's a pretty hot topic this morning. Okay, whether or not Julian Edelman deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. We'll get to that in a second. What did you like watching about Jules, and what are you gonna miss watching about Jules?
So Jules was easily my favorite Patriot. Ultimately favorite over even Tom Brady. Obviously, Tom is kind of on his own, pedestal because of who he is and what he brings to the team and what he does. But Jules was really my favorite. I mean, his charisma, his attitude, his drive, uh, the guy literally always left it out on the field. And you can say that about a lot of people, but do you really mean it? I mean, Jules put it all out there. The dude was electric. Loved watching him. He lit it up in a lot of different ways. That's for sure. I mean, punt returns, even kick returns,
Yeah,
it was just really fun and really emotional and really a top character kind of guy.
yeah, it's definitely especially for us Patriot fans, it absolutely sucks that 3 years in a row we have lost a cornerstone piece, but
Yeah.
truly like, and these are all offensive pieces, which typically in today's day and age, people follow offensive players much more than they follow defensive players, fantasy teams and all that other BS. But you lose Gronk, then you lose Tom Brady, and now we lose Julian Edelman. And Gronk was kind of like an early retirement. He had some injury issues, but at the same time, we're just kind of like, you know what, Gronk, it ran its course. The Tom Brady situation, obviously, completely separate circumstance. The Julian Edelman one, if you're watching 2020, you're seeing the wheels fall off, and it's really
Yeah.
disappointing. There were times where I'll admit it. I talked pretty bad about Jules last year. That he shouldn't be on the team or shouldn't be playing because he's not he couldn't play. He
It
wasn't
was a health
medically.
issue, though.
It was a health
Right.
issue. It had nothing
Exactly.
to
It
do
was
with
nothing.
effort or anything like that. It was
Absolutely.
100%. He's I hate even to say this. He was washed. Like his knees were too much for him. The age, everything had caught up.
I was hopeful
And
for this season, honestly. I really was hopeful, but it's not surprising seeing it happen the way it did. And I would rather him retire than come back and try to put together a year that could potentially be worse if the injuries are really that bad. That could potentially be worse than the past season.
yeah, no, I'm actually 100% with you. And I'm gonna miss all the little nuances that Julian Edelman brings to the Patriots. Um, it's gonna be a hell of a story. Gonna be a hell of a comeback. You know, the the divisional championship game in Foxborough, down 2 scores. He throws his first ever career pass. It's completed to Danny Amendola down the sideline for a touchdown. Gillette was rocking probably louder than it's ever rocked in its entire life. And yeah, stuff like that I'm going to miss, and
Oh yeah.
the times where he's screaming at Tom Brady on the sideline, "You're too old. You're too effing old." It's stuff like that. It's just those little things that he brings that other people just don't. And it's not because they can't. It's just like Julian's special in that kind of way.
Oh yeah.
And speaking of special, I think the reason that we're both here is we want to talk about Julian Edelman and his chances, we'll call it that, at making the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So,
oh yeah.
First thing I want to say is before we even start, because I'm going to say this and then I'm going to let you go, and then I'll talk after. I don't believe Julian Edelman will get into the Hall of Fame. I want to start off by saying that I personally don't believe he will get into the Football Hall of Fame. Because there is no criteria, and that's the one bad thing about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. There is no written out criteria, because if there was, we would know if somebody's going to get in the Hall of Fame. There's not, though.
Yeah.
So it's always it's a what if, or should they, or based off the body of work. And it's all of us Monday morning quarterbacks just sitting back and saying, well, I think he should because of the body of work, or I don't think, or the longevity, or too much. There's a lot to be said. I'll let you kind of start it off. What do you think?
In my opinion, it should be a very you should really take circumstance and different situations into account when you're selecting somebody for the Hall of Fame. Stats obviously matter. That is football at its most rudimentary, the important stuff, what have you physically accomplished? Then there's stuff that's not as tangible. Your contributions to your team, to the league as a whole, the ability of certain players to just change the game altogether, and obviously, there are people that have or will make the Hall of Fame with different levels of stats, different levels of contributions, and whatnot. I am personally hopeful that Julian will make the Hall of Fame. I'm not delusional. He will not be a first ballot. I would put him in first ballot, but it's not a bunch of me voting on the Hall of Fame. His stats are great. For what they are. He's in a system that moves the ball around. He's part of a team that wins a shit ton of games. So when you're not playing from behind and you're not throwing the ball, he's out there pass blocking, really blocking for the run, like whatever he has to do, being a freaking distraction on the field, whatever. When you're playing up, there's not a lot of opportunity to score a whole lot of points for, all the wide receivers. He's a big contribution to the team, though, in the ways that he does do all of the things. He contributes to the blocking and everything else. He's a leader that you can't possibly put a value on. He's a heart and soul of this team and what it means to be a Patriot. And I mean, the fiercest competitor out there, the drive, the fire. I mean, it's absolutely like almost completely unmatched. I mean, really. And I don't see how he can't possibly make it in. I mean, he means too much. His playoff stats alone are just fantastic. And the clutch catches. I mean, come on, picking the ball off the turf, just a single hand. I mean, under it, like just so close. Like the dude does things that are unnatural. I mean, he deserves to be in for a lot of those reasons. Obviously, he's not putting up Jerry Rice numbers, but I mean, come on, not everybody's going to. And you've got people making it into the Hall of Fame that don't have super impressive stats either. I mean, Jules would not be the worst statistical wide receiver in the league that made the Hall of Fame. No, I didn't take the time to look that up right now, but I was doing a little bit of look, and I seen there were a couple of wide receivers in there with less catches, less yards, some that had more, but also played like 16 seasons and things like that. So there's a lot of, different situations that play into that. But I am ultimately, bottom line, I am hopeful he does make the Hall of Fame. eventually.
So there's a lot, in my opinion, to really dissect. The first thing is everybody's go-to argument: the stats. There's not enough there, and that's I somewhat agree. But let me back up. Okay. So first off, I don't want to get into the every time there's an argument about should this person or should this not person be in the Hall of Fame. We've had a couple on the the Real Talk page, and just recently there was one on LaShawn McCoy, and I instantly had already done some homework on it, and I actually popped up a couple of different backs on a blind resume, and there was a back that had better stats than pretty much across the board, and it was Corey Dillon. Corey Dillon has a Super Bowl win with the Patriots, and he was left off out of the Hall of Fame. Nobody's even talked about him as a Hall of Fame contender. And a lot of times, and this isn't an us against the world mentality kind of thing. I'm just saying, I'm stating the facts. There are a lot of Patriot dynasty players from both the first set and the second set that I think will be overlooked because we've done everything in our power to make sure that Tom Brady has gotten every damn bit of credit that he deserves. But because of that, I almost think it's backfired because there's a lot of people that undervalue everybody else. There are people that
dynasty as a whole shines too bright to show each individual player.
I 100% agree. And Bill Belichick and Tom Brady rightfully are going to get a lot of credit, and they deserve every bit. But there are Hall of Fame level players that played on both sets of these dynasties. There are people out there, and it's stupid. There are people out there that honestly don't think Gronk's that good, and it's just crazy to me. It's just crazy to me. And Julian Edelman, at 5'10", 200 pounds, okay, had no scholarships out of high school. He played quarterback for Kent State University. And I know you know where that is because you live in Ohio. A lot of people don't know what that is. Kent State University, it's over near Akron, okay? It's in northeast Ohio. And coincidentally, I find this hilarious. He had one catch in college for 11 yards. It's kind of funny, 11. He did not get an invite to the combine. He was not invited, all right? And Bill Belichick drafts him in the 7th round. I'm going to take all of that into consideration when it comes to stats. Because how did I open this up? I told you that he was buried behind Randy Moss and Wes Welker. You're not going to walk into this league on any team. I don't care who it is. If they have 2 Hall of Fame / Pro Bowl level players starting for you, if you're a 7th round pick, I don't care how good you are. You're not going to step on the field in front of those players.
Right.
It's going to take time and effort. And Julian stuck through it. And what did he do in that time? He went and played slot corner. He went and returned punts. He went and returned kickoffs. He was sacking quarterbacks on corner blitzes.
Pretty sure he was also on the coverage team for kicks too.
Yes.
He did everything.
He played all special teams. And Bill Belichick gave him the most perfect speech, introduction or parting ways. Go back and go find it. It's all over. Bill Belichick talking about Julian Edelman after he issues retirement. Everything he says is everything you want to hear once you're done playing football. Those things matter, okay? And today, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, Hines Ward won 2 Super Bowls and was a Super Bowl MVP and has double the stats of Julian Edelman and won't get in. That's a shame. But I'm not here to compare Julian and other players. I'm just here to make a case for Julian, although I said he won't get in. Because there's lots of Patriots that have been overlooked. Ty Law took a couple of times to get in. Richard Seymour is still being overlooked today. Corey Dillon is still being overlooked today. There's a lot, and there's more. There's plenty more. Asante Samuels, it's a freaking crime that he hasn't even gotten talked about. He's not even on the ballot. It's a crime. But Julian Edelman, he's done things that are just different. Being part of in my opinion, okay, because of how it was done, the second Patriots dynasty is the greatest dynasty of all time. If you're going to split the two, and the reason being is they won 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, and they went to a fourth. They went to 4 out of 5 Super Bowls. It's really an incredible feat, and winning 3 of them is damn good. And the funny thing is the one they lost, Julian Edelman never stepped foot on the field. And there's a lot of people, myself included, that believes that if he was on the field, we would have won. And I know you're like, well, Tom Brady threw 500 yards. Yeah, but guess what? He didn't have Julian Edelman. He could have threw 600.
Right, seriously.
I mean, those things matter. I don't think it's a coincidence that Julian Edelman's 3-0 in a Super Bowl. I don't think that's a coincidence. And I don't know. I just there's a lot that can be said about Julian. He didn't really start playing his first bit of ball until 2013. And when he did, he took off. In 2012, at the very end of that season, Wes Welker ended up getting hurt. He had a torn ACL. That's when Julian Edelman was quote unquote discovered, because he was able to. He earned his spot. He came in, replaced Wes, and lined up next to Gronk and Hernandez, and you got to see Jules.
I'm pretty sure his second touchdown catch came during that playoff run there.
Yeah, it did.
That late into his career, because again, behind multiple great receivers, you're not going to see the field. So
yeah, and even losing Randy Moss, they ended up gaining Gronk and Hernandez, so they still had so much talent, and Jules was buried. And he's not a receiver. He's a freaking college quarterback. So those things matter. They need to be considered. You need to take it under the microscope, and you need to really think, what more did he needed to do? What more did Julian Edelman need to do? Because I know you're like, well, he has 0 Pro Bowls. Well, he was gypped out of a couple. I could go back and show you where he should have been in over certain people, but wasn't, because he's never been the touchdown machine, but he moves the chains. He blocks his ass off. He's a leader on and off the field. And at the end of the day, he was a Super Bowl MVP in a game where the Patriots scored 1 touchdown and he didn't score it. There's a reason for that, because he literally is the reason they're getting down the field. I sit here today, and there's a lot of people that probably think that Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer, and I agree.
Yeah.
But I don't know how. He's 500 for his career, okay? But because he beat Brady twice in the Super Bowl, he's going to go in the Hall of Fame. Why? Because he just played a long time? I would rather you be elite. I would rather you win. And I would rather you show up on the grandest stage on a short period of time than have a 20-year career of average. But because you beat Brady twice, you're in the Hall of Fame. That's where I'm at. Like, if you honestly think Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer but not Julian, I'm just like, how? How? Assess your life. Assess how you think, because I'm not there. I think that Julian Edelman's 2013, 2019 stretch, it's being overlooked.
Yeah, seriously. You cut those first 3 years out and cut out last season for injuries and whatnot.
Yeah.
And just look at those stats, then you're looking at a lot better, stats per years and whatnot. Because the playing time is all that matters. Once he's on the field and playing, those are the stats that matter. The lack of stats before he's seeing the field, that's irrelevant.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, I don't think he will get in. I've said that. But it's because a lot of Patriot players aren't getting in, because they're being overlooked by the success that the Patriots had. And it's not necessarily wrong to think that way. Somebody brought up that Dwayne Bowe has better stats than Julian Edelman. Who would you rather have, Julian Edelman or Dwayne Bowe? Like, come on. This isn't brain science. Like, come on. Like, seriously, like, Hines Ward, yeah, it's a damn shame he's not in. He should be. But this isn't about Hines Ward. We're talking about Julian Edelman.
I would feel a lot better about people's arguments for Julian not making the Hall of Fame if the Hall of Fame were actually more strict. there's cases where I think that there's people who are getting gypped out, and then there's times when you look back through it and you go, well, damn, I'm kind of shocked that they're in there. So it's pretty inconsistent. Like, I'd be fine with Julian not making it if we were really strict and we inducted less freaking people and we only inducted people who really deserve to be there, and we tighten up on the criteria that's not really written out anywhere anyways. But since it is the way it is right now, Julian absolutely deserves, with some of the guys that are in there, to be there. So
I think another thing that I would bring to the table is, so you have Jerry Rice, most considered the greatest wide receiver / football player of all time. Okay. A lot of times people will bring up Randy Moss because Randy Moss was very dominant for X amount of time. He had several seasons where he was clearly the best player on the planet and probably the best receiver to ever play. And a lot of times when it comes down to those two, Jerry's definitely got a little bit long longevity, okay, which is fair. But like the deciding argument is, well, Jerry's got rings. Jerry won. So can Julian use that argument? Because he did.
Right.
And he won at the highest level. He was 3-0. And at the end of the day, he's only behind Jerry Rice in playoff yardage. That's huge. That's huge. And it needs to speak volumes. I don't know. I find it funny that Julian Edelman's going to end his career as somebody that was overlooked his entire career. And he's going to be overlooked for the Hall of Fame probably too. Hopefully he's not. I think it would be smart of the NFL to put him in, because Julian Edelman is not a good player. He is a great player. And it's not the Hall of Fame of good, it's the Hall of Fame of great. And I believe that Julian Edelman is that. Just
Absolutely.
Because he's not 6'5" and played for 10 years and was a first-round pick, you have to take things into context. He was a 7th-round pick that never played wide receiver. He had 1 catch for 11 yards in college. Those things have to be earned. And he earned them. And he won at the highest level and won a Super Bowl MVP. I don't know. At the end of the day, I if it's my vote, I put him in.
Clutch factor matters. He's in.
Clutch factor matters. I'll end it with this, unless you have something else. You can't tell the game of football without talking about Julian Edelman. You can't do it.
Agreed.
He was part of the greatest comeback in the history of the league. And on the sideline the entire time, down 28-3. There's plenty of video. Go look it up. It's going to be a hell of a story. It's going to be a hell of a story. He knew it. He knew it the whole time, and orchestrated a comeback with probably, I don't know if it's probably, the greatest catch in Super Bowl history in the most improbable way.
Honestly, I mean, how many players could keep that mindset, Most players are shutting down, and this dude's over here firing up the team, getting the troops ready for work. He ain't thinking about shutting down. 28-3, my ass.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. He has the game-winning touchdown in Super Bowl 49. Super Bowl 49, he has the game-winning touchdown. He's the Super Bowl MVP of Super Bowl 53. He wasn't available in Super Bowl 52, or he might have a 4th ring. There's he was huge in every Super Bowl he ever played in. Game-winning catch, the improbable catch, and the Super Bowl MVP. Nothing more to say. I think he's a Hall of Famer, and there's a lot of teams that for a long time would have loved to have Julian Edelman.
Absolutely.
So, with that being said, we're going to move on here to our draft episode. Don't go anywhere, and we'll be back in just a minute.